What a wonderful introduction to our program today. We're thrilled to have our USPTO director speak to us about how we're expanding American innovation. I'm Lisa Kutala, and I'm the president and CEO of UNM Rainforest Innovations. And we are pleased to have both Hope Shimabuku, who is the director of the Texas Regional U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. She will make some remarks later in the program. And then the director of the USPTO, Andrei Iancu. And he has an impressive bio that I'll just share briefly with you as an introduction. He is the Undersecretary of Commerce and the director of the USPTO. In his role as Undersecretary of Commerce for Intellectual Property and Director of the USPTO, Mr. Iancu provides leadership to one of the largest IP offices in the world, with more than 12,000 employees and an annual budget of over $3.5 billion. He also serves as the principal advisor to the President through the Secretary of Commerce on domestic and international intellectual property policy matters. Prior to joining the USPTO, Mr. Iancu was the managing partner at Andrei and Manila LLP, where his practice focused on intellectual property litigation. Mr. Iancu has also taught patent law at UCLA School of Law and has written and spoken publicly on a variety of intellectual property issues. Prior to his legal career, Mr. Iancu was an engineer at Hughes Aircraft Company. He holds a JD from the UCLA School of Law, an MS in Mechanical Engineering, and a BS in Aerospace Engineering, both from UCLA. Welcome, Mr. Iancu.
Thank you, Lisa, very much for that very kind introduction. Great to be with you and all of your colleagues at the University of New Mexico. And unfortunately, I'm sorry I can't be with you in person. Normally, I would have come out to be there with you live, but this is the way things are nowadays, and at least modern technology is letting us get together virtually. The university really has amazing accomplishments when it comes to innovation and protecting that innovation. Let me just mention briefly before I get into my remarks, I understand that you have a number of inductees into the National Academy of Inventors, and going back to 2015, which is quite impressive. You have a number of folks almost every year. So you have Dr. Stephen Brook, Dr. Jeff Brinker from 2015, Dr. Gabriel Lopez from 2016, Dr. Cheryl Willman and Dr. Plamen Atanasov from 2017, Dr. Bryce Chakarian and Dr. David Peabody from 2019, and the most recent inductee from really just last week, apparently, Dr. Larry Scalar. Really very impressive and consistent performance for the university, which is in part why it's so great to be with you to discuss innovation and the importance of IP to that innovation. So let me, I most look forward to your questions, Lisa, and the audience questions. But before then, let me just set the stage a little bit about and talk a bit about, put in context, historical context, the importance of innovation, the importance of IP to that innovation, and how we get more of both in the United States. So I think if you go around and you ask common folks, whether it's on the university campus or just in the street or at any restaurant, you might want to stop and take the survey and ask them if they believe innovation is important. I think almost everyone would say, yes, innovation is really important. Is innovation important for human development? Everyone would agree. Is innovation important for the United States, whether it's national security or economic growth? I think almost everybody would agree. But the next question is not so clear in my mind, which is in terms of what folks would say, which is how important is intellectual property protection to secure that innovation, to promote that innovation, and to encourage and incentivize that innovation. I don't know what the survey would say, but I am sure it would be to a significant extent lower than the universal acceptance of the importance of innovation. So there is something missing when we come to public perception in almost any circle, the connection and the critically important and, in my opinion, necessary connection between intellectual property and innovation. And it's important for all of us to not only understand that connection, but to be able to explain it to folks and to change minds so that folks understand that it's virtually impossible to have a robust innovation economy without a robust intellectual property ecosystem. You know, humans have been on this planet for thousands and thousands of years, organized in societies. You can go back to the ancient societies of the Middle East, the Greeks, the Romans, the Hebrews, the ancient Chinese in Asia, and others, the Mayans, the Aztecs, on and on, across the world and across time. And just 200 years ago, when this country was founded, the state of the human condition was basically the same as it was in antiquity. If you wanted to get from one place to another 200 years ago, you would have to ride on horseback or in a horse-drawn carriage. If you wanted to send a message across town, you had to send, Paul Revere or carrier pigeons. If you needed anesthesia, your best bet would be a shot of whiskey. It took 2 weeks to get news of the Declaration of Independence from Philadelphia in 1776 to the capital of Virginia, to Williamsburg. 2 weeks in 1776, about as long as it took Alexander the Great to send news of his victory in 331 BC from the Battle of Arbela back to his capital in Macedonia. The state of the human condition was basically the same as in antiquity. So what happened 200 years ago to change the course of human history this dramatically? And in my view, obviously lots of things happened with the establishment of this country and many other things, but for our purposes here, it's the United States Constitution and the inclusion in it of the Intellectual Property Clause at Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8, which ensures to authors and inventors their exclusive rights to their writings and discoveries. In other words, the establishment of the modern, what we know today, copyright and patent systems. For the first time in human history, invention and the protection of that invention was democratized. Anyone, at least according to the Constitution, could invent and could secure protection for those inventions. You didn't have to be friends with the crown. You didn't have to be rich. Didn't matter where you lived. Anyone could do it. And what we have seen in the ensuing years, and we can talk more about various examples, but what we have seen in ensuing years is an explosion of innovation, creating economic and societal growth at exponential rates, never ever before matched anywhere on the planet or anywhere in the long course of human existence. And we see that in everything we do every day. Here we are 10 months into a pandemic. We have at least one vaccine approved, on the cusp in a day or so, probably, of a second one in the United States. And then there's others across the world. And there are many others in the pipeline. Less than a year. And there are all sorts of treatments to this new pandemic and equipment at incredibly fast rates. That doesn't happen by accident. That comes on the heels of years of innovation and protection of that innovation. So we see this every day. And here we are speaking live across thousands of miles with virtually no delay, both by video and audio, and so many other innovations. What we observe is also backed up by data. IP-intensive industry in today's world make about 50% of the United States GDP. Workers in IP-intensive industries have salaries that are almost 50% higher than those who work in non-IP intensive industries in the private sector. The rate of employment of a startup that receives its first patent is 36% higher in the first 5 years after that first patent than it would be without a patent. And the effect on sales growth is even higher. 2 out of 3 new jobs in the United States, this is a remarkable statistic. 2 out of every 3 new jobs in the United States are created by innovative startups. So the anecdotal history that we see, live and breathe and observe every day, combined with the statistical data, is unmistakable that our IP-backed innovation ecosystem has worked tremendously well in the history of the United States. The problem is, despite the Constitution's very broad-based language democratizing innovation, the fact is that innovation in the United States remains, to this day, highly concentrated. And it's concentrated demographically, geographically, and economically. Demographically, we just released a study at the USPTO earlier this year that measures the number of women named on US patents. And in 2019, which was the last full year that we measured, we saw about 13% of inventors named on patents being women. 13%. Now that's an increase over the prior report we published that measured, put the rate of women inventors in 2016 at 12%. So we're at least moving in the right direction, but there's a long way to go, and we really must go much faster. There are other studies that show the rates of innovation of racial minorities, and for many groups, it's lower than what I've mentioned for women. Geographically, we know that innovation is concentrated in certain geographical locations around the country. And we know the major ones, right? Silicon Valley, the Boston-Philadelphia corridor, the Research Triangle in North Carolina. We see some others developing in Texas now, in Austin and neighborhoods, pulling actually, as we see in the news recently, from Silicon Valley, but also self-grown, and other places, North Dakota and the like. And there are movements in New Mexico and neighboring states as well. But still, there are vast swaths of the United States where that's not innovating nearly at the same rate, and that's irrespective of demographics in those neighborhoods. So all this, in my view, has to change. It's important for the individuals. It's important for the communities and companies they live in and work in. And it's important for the United States. So what to do? It's a very complex issue, obviously, with many, many ramifications and many reasons behind it. But we can't do nothing just because it's a difficult issue. So we have a variety of programs at the PTO, and we can talk more about that. The US government has many programs, state governments have programs. But what I believe that the United States needs is a national strategy, a focused, concentrated, systematic national strategy that addresses these issues. So we have created a National Council for expanding American innovation. It's comprised of leaders from industry, so CEOs of major corporations, from tech to biopharma to manufacturing and automobiles and the like, small businesses as well, academia, so we have some presidents of universities, government leaders, and others. And the National Council will be is charged to help us draft such a national strategy. It's not an easy task, and it will obviously take some time, and we're going to seek public input. But universities and academia in general play a huge role in this. In fact, as I said, it's one of the 3 absolutely necessary pillars for us to have a chance to make a difference. In addition to industry and government, universities are the other critically important pillar. And there are many things that universities do and can do that's unique to them. Obviously, education is one of them, and we'll talk more about that. But the other thing that universities have on their premises, in their midst, built in, is a wealth of mentors and role models. And it is absolutely critical for any of us to have a chance to make a difference here, whether it's with more women inventors, more minority inventors, or inventors from underserved communities across the United States. We need more role models that the next generation of inventors can see themselves in, can relate to, and then folks that they can reach out to help them navigate this complicated system. Universities have these folks built in to their faculty and other members of their communities. So let me stop there. I look forward to the questions and the discussion, but in my view, this is one of the most important issues for the United States to address looking forward.